Hello to all viewers, hello to everyone. I am Shiloh, the last scribe for the house of Jacob. I am a messenger and a true servant of the Almighty. On November 29, 2019, the Almighty will visit the earth to judge every living thing. On that day, every living thing will be given life or death. The Almighty has caused me to see who I am and to know that I am a real descendant of the house of Jacob. This video is part 2 of a series of videos that covers everything in the book of Genesis from Genesis chapter 1 to chapter 50, and it is titled The Book of Genesis, Unsealed and Untold. With all the confusion removed, with all the allegories removed, in these series of videos you will hear the truth according to the Almighty, according to what the Almighty commanded the house of Jacob to keep recorded. Part 1 ended with the creation of the first species of human beings called Behemoth. I will start where I last left off. Let's begin. Now let them come to life, and of the dumb four-legged beast I will bring forth the Behemoth. The Behemoth are the first species of human beings. They are of mind, body, blood, and heart. Their desire, appetite, passions, and emotions are things of their soul. Therefore, their soul is the life in their blood. From animal transformation, the Behemoth are a species of human persons. As the Almighty commanded, they did come forth to life. The Almighty created both male and female. The Almighty blessed them by His commandments, saying, "Be fruitful, increase, grow, bring forth fruit, branch off, and show fruitfulness. Conquer and subdue the earth. Over the process of time, multiply, become many, become numerous, and do much in respect to your authority." Now the Almighty had created moving and creeping organisms of the land and of the sea, creeping reptiles of the land and of the sea, each after its own species. Then the Almighty looked at them and considered. He observed them to learn about them. As He observed them, the Almighty discerned to see if He could respect them, to see if He would enjoy looking at them, and to see if He would approve of them. The Almighty saw some good things, but the Almighty saw that it could be better. Therefore, as designated by the authority of the Almighty, for an individual monument and memorial, the name of the first flood that increased and dispersed from the seas is Pishon. The Almighty caused this flood of water to go around the whole earth and surround it. Like a skirt, it surrounded all the persons of the nations that inhabited the earth. Then the flood of water came back, returning in reverse and uniting to its designated foundation, that is, encircling the land of the living. Then the Almighty caused the flow of the sea to transform. It changed direction to go partly around the earth, and the other part of the sea turned itself back, leading to and encircling the land of Havilah. Now, after the flood of water, there was a beautiful clear sky and fair weather. It was most pleasant and agreeable and appropriate to human senses. Now, after the flood, the land's glittering and precious gold metal that is measured by weight was beautiful. The land was ready for a good man and a good woman, even good men and good women with good words, good understanding, and good morals. From the first species of human persons who were left alive after the flood, as the Almighty commanded, life did come forth. The Almighty blessed them by His commandment, saying, "Be fruitful, increase, grow, bring forth fruit, branch off, show fruitfulness. Conquer and subdue the earth. Over the process of time, multiply and become many, become numerous, and do much in respect to your authority." Then the Almighty observed them and considered. After considering, He summoned His holy assembly with His voice. The Almighty preached and proclaimed to them. The Almighty spoke to them, saying, "From the human species of Behemoth I will make an individual species of mankind called Adam. He will be an individual species from the original creation of human persons of the Behemoth. His species will resemble His own image, and their image will represent themselves. He and his mate will bring forth children and maintain families. But he and his species of persons will make themselves to be idols, and their idols will be after their own nature and likeness. They will imagine themselves as being in the image of Elohim. Their picture of Elohim is of a supreme God who gives birth to gods, goddesses, angels, godlike ones, rulers, and great judges, each with their own power to make divine works and each with their own special possessions. But they are all false interpretations and demonic imaginations, because I am the Almighty, the all-supreme ruler, the one true creator of all things. Based on my likeness to build and make patterns of design, they will be able to build and make patterns of design. I am the Almighty, the one true living supreme being. Based on my likeness to adore and celebrate, they will be able to adore and celebrate. Based on my likeness to ordain and appoint, they will be able to ordain and appoint. I will let them dominate and rule over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over the wild beast, the cattle, the animals, and over everything that creeps and moves on the soil of the ground. Then the Almighty finished speaking to his holy assembly. The second time, as designated by the authority of the Almighty for an individual monument and memorial, the name of the second flood that burst from the foundation of the seas is Gihon. The Almighty caused this flood to go around the whole earth and surround it. Like a skirt, it surrounded all the people of the nations that inhabited the earth. The Almighty caused the flow of the sea to transform. It changed direction to go partly around the earth, and the other part of the sea changed direction and turned itself back, leading to and encircling the whole land of Ethiopia, Cush. Then the Almighty created the first man for the species of Adam. Now the Almighty shaped and formed this human being to be born of the human species of Bahema, and made him come to life. Then of the opposite sex for a mate, the Almighty created a female human being, also born of the first human being species of Bahema. Then the Almighty blessed them. He blessed them to be able to act in adoration, to be able to praise one another, to be able to kneel and give thanks, to be able to congratulate, to be able to blaspheme, and to be able to curse. He commanded them, saying, by the process of time, increase and become many, multiply and become numerous, fill your hands, nourish and satisfy yourselves, accomplish and replenish yourselves upon the soil of the ground in respect to the authority you are given. Your end will be the soil in the ground. Dominate and conquer the earth. Dominate and rule over the fish of the sea. Dominate and rule over the flying things of the air, and over everything that moves upon the soil of the ground. The Almighty spoke to them, saying, I have given you the herb, the grass, and the green plants that have seeds. You scattered the seeds upon the earth to sow the seed in the earth. I have given you every tree of timber, of firm wood, of stalk, of woody flax, and every fruit of the ground, every fruit of the tree that has seed. It is better for you, and to you it will be food to eat, and the timber will be fuel for fire. I have given you dominion over all the flying things of the air and everything that moves and creeps on the ground. I have given you dominion over all the living creatures of body, blood, and heart. Their soul is the life in their blood. Do not eat the blood. I have given you dominion over all creatures that have a mind of activity, and over all things with desire, appetite, passions, and emotions, which are things of the soul. I have given you every green herb and every green grass for food to eat. Then the Almighty observed everything that he made. This is the sixth miracle, the sixth work that the Almighty, the Creator of all things, completed. And this has covered the time period from the first species of human beings up to the third species of human beings. Now, all species were made to always be dependent upon the Almighty's approval, so as the Almighty had commanded, these human beings became strong and fat. Then they began to defile themselves, as the Almighty had foresaw. The species of Adam became hypocrites and persons of low degree. And Adam, this human man, chose and invited guests. He preached to them about Elohim, saying, all humans are made in the image of a God. He brought his female mate before them and proclaimed her name to be Eve, meaning the life giver. He proclaimed her to be the mother of all living things. Together they created illusions that were a vain show of emptiness. The inhabitants developed and influenced extreme ways of feeding among themselves. Like lumberjacks, these inhabitants cut down trees of wood to cut out and create their own qualified creator of heaven and earth. These species of human persons were deceiving hypocrites. Their hearts and minds were godlike continually, with their mind of activity and passion, after their own image and likeness. These species of human persons created metals from ore. They hammered out metal into the face of animals. They hammered out metal into the face of themselves. With feast, they celebrated the face of animals. With feast, they celebrated themselves as gods and goddesses. These species of human persons had very greedy appetites. They desired and enjoyed eating blood and fresh and old raw flesh. They were always lusting for pleasure. Their rulers and judges were not humble, but were godlike hypocrites, even their common men. The Almighty observed all these humans and considered. He observed them to learn about them, to see if he could respect them, and to see if he could enjoy them. The Almighty even appeared visible before them and presented himself to them. But the Adami did not make themselves servants to the Almighty. They would not labor to serve the Almighty, nor could they be enticed to. They would not honor and worship the Almighty, nor could they be enticed to. So the Almighty judged them as detestable. The Almighty greatly hated them, even loathed them, because they were stone-hearted, perverse, and causing great hatred on the earth. They honed stone and created weapons out of metal. They plummeted each other with sling stones, stones of fire, stones of destruction, one after another at one another. They were felching, meaning they sucked and drank semen from the genitals and sucked semen from the anus. They were being very disgusting. From among them there came forth a great male king, a godlike one. He declared and proclaimed himself to be the supreme God in the flesh, and the inhabitants made him their supreme God. They called him their Lord God. Displeased and disappointed, the Almighty condemned these low species of persons to be plucked out and put away from the region of the land, and for some to be dispersed to the end of the whole earth, because the Creator had saw all the things they did. Because of their desires, their thoughts, and actions, the Almighty desired another different form of human being to be an individual species of persons. The Almighty desired a species of persons that would be humble, that would care for and protect the earth. The Almighty, the Creator, desired a species of persons that will worship, fulfill, and accomplish His desires. The Almighty decided to cut off the glory of those low species of human persons. He decided to cut them down and cut them out from the land, thus mortally killing many of them. The Almighty, the Creator of all things, devised a divine plan in His mind. He preordained the birth of a different, more humble individual species of persons. The Almighty's supreme power of seeing gave birth to the idea for an individual species of man called Ish to be created of the soil of the earth. By His divine power of seeing, the Almighty looked unto this species' whole age, even until their ending generations. And by His own divine power of seeing, the Almighty found a certain man of this species of Ish than He considered. As the Almighty was advising Himself and looking at this man of the species of Ish, as the Almighty was observing this man's experiences, the Almighty was also giving attention to this man's mental abilities and spiritual faculties. The Almighty looked upon him joyfully and had respect for him. The Almighty continued observing His own vision by His own power of seeing. Now in the sight of others, the Almighty had caused a certain man of the species of Ish to appear before Him. In the Almighty's heaven, they looked at each other in the face. The Almighty found him worthy, and approved this man to become a man of high degree. Of all the people, of all the species of human persons, the Almighty found no one worthy but this certain man. Therefore the Almighty approved this certain man to become a great and mighty champion. The Almighty found this man worthy and approved him to become the steward for all the earth. At the end in generations of mankind, like the Almighty had judged the human beings of before, the Almighty will take his stand and execute his judgment for his cause. At the time of the Almighty's judgment, a certain man will be caused to come up before the Almighty himself. This certain man will stand before the Almighty's throne, and the Almighty will approve this certain man and cause him to become of the Almighty's own divine nature. The Almighty found this certain man worthy, and will approve this certain man to be heir of the Almighty's own royalty. Then this certain man will become the mighty ruler of all the earth, and the steward of all mankind. The Almighty also looked unto a chosen people for himself. By his divine power of seeing, the Almighty found a certain people of the species of Ish to perform his work on the earth, and these people will become the Almighty's special possession on the earth. After his judgment of mankind and all living things, the Almighty saw good upright men on the earth. He saw good upright women on the earth. They were all beautiful, happy, cheerful, and prosperous. He saw them living morally good and living ethically good. The Almighty saw kind men and kind men. The Almighty saw kind men and kind women living with good understanding and doing pleasant things on the earth. With divine activity in his mind, the Almighty predetermined a resolution and preordained a better species of persons, Ish, to be formed with a purpose to accomplish only what he desires. With divine activity in his mind, the Creator of all things predetermined a resolution and preordained a better species of persons to be formed with a purpose. When the Almighty created the earth with its first inhabitants, the land of earth did not include every plant. It did not include every grass. It did not include every tree nor every herb, because the Almighty had not caused it to rain on the earth. Now Adam and his species of persons had not made themselves worshippers to the Almighty. They would not labor to serve the Almighty. They would not honor and worship the Almighty. They would not listen to the Almighty. Now because of this, there was no one to till the ground. Now the Almighty had not yet created the first band of the species of Ish to serve and labor for him on the earth. He had not yet created the species of man to keep and protect his work on the earth. The Almighty had not yet created this species of persons to carry out the duties of his law and perform according to his word. Therefore, after considering, the Almighty summoned his holy assembly, and declared it to them, saying, I will make a new individual species of persons. I will create a species of persons called Ish. And of this species of man, I will create a man of high degree. He will be a great and mighty champion of the people. He will be kind and of good morals. He will be the first and only of his kind. He will be my steward for all the species of persons on the earth. As I have set the image of the human species of Bahama, and the species of out of me, the persons of low degree, similar to them, the image for the men of the species of Ish will resemble themselves, and their image will represent them. Each person with their own power to perform works, and each person will have their own special possessions. I am the Almighty, the one true Creator. Based on my likeness to build and make patterns of design, they will be able to build and make patterns of design. Based on my likeness to adore and celebrate, they will be able to adore and celebrate. Based on my likeness to ordain and appoint, they will be able to ordain and appoint. Based on my likeness to think, consider, and advise, they will be able to think, consider, and advise. They will be able to act in adoration and praise one another. They will be able to blaspheme and curse. but they are always dependent upon my approval. Therefore, because of the situation of the earth, I, the Almighty, by my divine activity of mind, from the species of persons called Ish, have predetermined the creation of a new species of man, and his human activity unto all his generations, for the purpose of a resolution. Because of the situation of the earth, I, the Almighty, the all-supreme ruler, have predetermined a chosen people to be created from this new species of man, for the purpose of a resolution. Both these species of man will be formed of the earth, both of human activity, both for the purpose of a resolution. Both are original creations. At their conception, both will be full-grown individuals. Both creations of Ish will be allowed to bring forth children and maintain families. And at the end generations of this first species of Ish, I, the Almighty, will judge every god and goddess, every ruler, judge, every godlike one, mighty one, even every person. Then the Creator sent out a command from his voice. With flashing lightning about, there came a mist of vapor and water into the earth. This watered the entire face of the earth and caused the first downpouring rain that the low species of human persons had seen on the earth. For the third time, as designated by the authority of the Almighty, for an individual monument and memorial, the name for the third flood that came from the sea is Hidekel, or Hidalak. At the birth of the Almighty's concept, at the idea of him creating the species of Ish, when counted, it is 315 years. Therefore, at the command that comes from the Almighty, he caused a flood of water to break from out the flowing sea, and spread forward toward various places to disperse and drown the low species of human beings to their end. As a world, the flood came rapidly from the sea unto the talebearers, unto those who maliciously gossip their own manner of living. It came unto those perverse, violent, and those boasting in their own behavior. The flood came unto those that were corrupt, and those that did not depart away from gender copulation with animals of 4 legs. The flood came rapidly from the sea, even unto the weak, unto the traveling person, unto those at ease, and unto those exercising themselves. The rushing flood entered eastward against Assyria. The flood spread more and more. A 4th part of the children, even of the great-grandchildren, died from the flood that broke forth from the rushing Euphrates. The male king was the highest rank and mightiest among the low species of human persons, called Adami. He discerned the weather activity and departed away. He escaped to the tip-top of a mountain summit in that land. When the flood came in from the flowing sea, he heard his people terrified or petrified in terror, even crying out his name. As their supreme God, they called out to him, and he saw the people from a distance. His families, his kinsmen, his countrymen were sinking in the water as a motionless stone. Every habitation for his nation was dispersed to the ends of the earth or drowned to their end. When the flood of water proceeded back to the flowing sea, shaking his head, the male king saw the heap of debris and rubbish on the land, and condemned the commandment sent from the Almighty. After the flood of Hidadel, or Hidalak, when the water proceeded back to the flowing sea, there was no good water for the species of Ish to drink in gulps. Now, the first man for the species of Ish had not yet been formed, but was preordained to be the husband of the land, and there was no water to supply and irrigate the land. There was no fresh water for the husband of the land to wash himself. Now the Almighty did not want the habitat for the first man for the species of Ish, after he had been created, to fall and fail. With the purpose to deliver the light to the first habitat for the first man of the species of Ish, with the purpose to deliver prosperity and pleasantness to the region. The Creator commanded the underground streams of flowing water to rise. The Creator caused a different form of water to come forth. Suddenly, from the shaking ground, the underground streams of water within the earth rose through the soil and proceeded to the surface of the ground, and it appeared in a garden. Then water came out into the garden and expanded, forming a stream through the garden, and proceeded out into the field, then into the land, then into the region, then into the country, then into the flowing sea. Now there was fresh water for the preordained husband of the land to wash himself and drink in gulps. Now there was water to supply and irrigate the garden, the land, even the face of the earth. This is the end of part 2 of my video series, The Book of Genesis, Unsealed and Untold, and covers my manuscript titled The Almighty, the Beginning, His Creation of Mankind, His Promise to Judge Mankind in His War against the Elohim, His New World and His Order. November 29, 2019 is the day of the Almighty's judgment upon the whole earth. Watch my videos, follow me, and discover the recorded truth about the Almighty, His power, His glory, His honor, His reputation, His experiences with, and His message to all individual species of persons on the earth.